Well, greetings and welcome to another episode of Health and Wellness in Focus program and podcast. This is brought to you by New Covenant Church, Wellness Hub, by Vision Communications, and by yours truly. We're also affiliated with the Wellness Connection, Inc. Our topic today is mental health for the holidays. As we enter the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's season, this can be a challenging time of the year, especially around people we're missing maybe for the first time these holidays. For this program, I'm very happy to have Camishe Nunley, who is a licensed mental health counselor, a woman of great expertise and great faith in God, to talk to us about our mental health during the holidays. I want to read to you from her bio on her website. Camishe is a passionate and dynamic speaker who has made it her life's work to promote mental health, empowerment, and emotional wholeness within the church. With a wealth of experience in this field, Camishe is widely recognized as a pioneer who has revolutionized the way pastors, clergy, and congregations approach their work. Through her thought-provoking talks and engaging workshops, Camishe inspires and empowers her audience to embrace a theology of weakness, challenging the prevailing culture of power, control, and hidden agendas that often pervades the church. Her unique perspective has won her accolades from countless individuals who have attended her trainings and workshops, with many describing her as revelatory. I can add my voice to those words as Camishe has presented at our church in a workshop on mental health, and we were greatly encouraged and educated. In addition to YouTube Live and Facebook Live, you'll be able to enjoy this podcast and program on demand, as well as audio podcasts through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. You'll want to share this with others. I promise you, you will be encouraged as you hear from Camishe Nunley. To learn more about Camishe Nunley, you want to visit her website, healingyourhiddenhurts.com. So please go there and learn more about how to connect with her and her team. New Covenant Church is fully committed to health and wellness in our congregation and larger community. And we host a group called Caregiver Support Group. We meet periodically to encourage those who care for others. We also have a webpage with many health and wellness resources. You want to check that out. And also you can connect with the Wellness Connection, coalition of pastors who also promote health and wellness. What you'll hear on this program and podcast isn't limited to the holidays. Though our topic is mental health for the holidays, I think we understand that there's no ending of the season where we should seek help and be encouraged in our mental health. I trust you will enjoy this program and be inspired and educated by it. I want to welcome to our program and podcast today, Camishe Nunley. Welcome, Camishe.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you allowing me to be here today.
Great, great. And in the notes to this podcast, you'll find a couple of links to sessions that Camishe has conducted at New Covenant Church. And she's been a great helper to our church community. And she shared with us on mental health and great insights. I appreciate her work, not only to her clients, but also she gives some time back to the community to help us at large and also as a church community. We all need help, y'all. God's with us. He's helping us, but faith without works is dead. So with your faith, add some expertise, okay? Our topic for this program and podcast is mental health during the holidays. And Thanksgiving's around the corner, followed by Christmas and New Year's. And I felt that I wanted to bring her on to help us understand why there's difficulty sometimes with people navigating the holidays and feeling a certain way. We'll talk about that. I want to first, though, start with this. Camishe, I am so interested in the fact you've chosen this profession as a mental health counselor. And I kind of think that God maybe had something to do with that too, leading you that way. But why did you choose this profession as a mental health counselor?
Yes, absolutely. And I get this question a lot. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to be on. A lot of times when people ask me this question, I like to share with people my journey of becoming a mental health counselor. with what I call my on-the-job training in dysfunction. So growing up surrounded by unaddressed mental illness within my family, I learned early on what unhealthy patterns or dysfunction looked like. And those experiences set me on this journey, ultimately, not to just escape the dysfunction, but to understand the human mind, to understand emotional mental health, to understand transformation, and to understand renewal in a way that could bring meaning to both the good and bad of my experiences. And so at first, I turned to faith as a way to help my family and mental health as a way to help my family. But over time, as you know, it has to be a personal journey. And so I learned very quickly that my relationship with Christ and my ability to overcome some of my previous situations were an absolute essential to doing this work and doing it effectively. So I developed a relationship with Christ, and that laid the foundation for my own healing. And through him, I began to reframe my painful experiences as more of a training grounds for growth. So now I feel called to like guide others towards healing, helping them to find meaning, helping them to align their hearts, minds, and souls with the truth of who they are in Him.
Let me ask you this. So we do understand and appreciate the power of God, power of faith in God. And so where does integration come where the mental health expertise comes into the picture alongside our faith?
I think one of the core essential values for me is knowing um, how at the root my spiritual journey was to my own healing. And so while I went to school for mental health counseling, it oftentimes would take people to a certain level before they would plateau in treatment with me. And I would oftentimes ask God, like, what is it that I'm doing that it's allowing for this plateau of sorts? And the key phrasing that was given to me was, well, you know how essential I've been in your life and your own healing and recovery from the things that you've been through. How come you aren't bringing me into the room with you? And so at that point, I started to study up on what it would look like to integrate spiritual concepts with psychological practices. And I stumbled onto a theory called dialogical hermeneutics, which is the basis of how I practice, which just means teaching people in their experiences, whether good, bad, how to create meaning and how to interpret their experiences. And so, in integrating that with mental health, I've been able to be much more of an effective psychotherapist or counselor, and just meeting people in that space that I think a lot of times gets left out when we don't include our spiritual selves.
That's very good. I appreciate that. And I've always believed and have seen that believers in Christ obviously do better when we add expertise. It's not that we become worldly, we become well-rounded. And God's a God of science. He's a God of, He made us, spirit, soul, body, mind. And so to understand our inner workings is so vital. And I appreciate you taking time to do that. We had a conversation a couple of years ago. You've begun a journey toward a doctorate. And I've been kind of following you from afar and check in from time to time, see how you're doing. And so where are you in this process, in this journey of earning your doctorate?
So in this process, it's been so rewarding. And I have to say that much of it is about professional and personal growth as much as it is about my credentials or developing a credential. It's been very humbling and rewarding, as I said, as I enter my third year. Hard to believe, my third year, where I will be beginning my dissertation, I think, in this summer. And it's definitely equipping me to apply deeper layers of knowledge to the treatment process and learning how to refine integration of mental health and faith so I can serve or be of better service to people. So, yeah.
Well, we're excited about what you're doing. You've already had in my mind, a doctoral level of commitment, in your previous work. And now, as you say, it's more than a credential. I mean, you're doing this to enrich yourself and and enhance what God has empowered you to do. So thank you so much on behalf of all of us who know you. We're praying for you. Amen. We know that third year is it's going to be fire, but God
My
is with
goodness.
you. He's with you. We are with you
Thank
as
you for
well.
that.
Okay. Let me ask you this. We know that mental health help is so urgent and
Mm.
people need it. We say people should seek it. And yet we have a lack of mental health professionals, especially people of color. What would you say to someone watching, a young person or a parent, about maybe
Mm.
considering this profession of being a mental health professional?
Well, I definitely want them to know first and foremost that we need you. Our community needs you. Our clients need you. And so we just need more voices to sound the alarm around the necessity of mental health and mental health well-being. And so if there's any inkling in you that you even just get your interest piqued about something like this, or going into the mental health field, I encourage you to do your research and learn about it and figure out ways that you can be utilized in this field. Even if it's not as a psychotherapist, there's so many other roles that you can play in this field. And so that would definitely be my encouragement for you.
Let's turn now to our topic for today, which is mental health for the holidays.
Mhm.
My first question is, what are your concerns as we enter this holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's? What concerns you about our mental health during this season?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. So the holiday season can be both a beautiful time of connection and meaning, but it can also be coupled with unspoken pressures, unresolved family dynamics, financial stressors, or even feelings of loneliness, grief. And for many of us, there's this weight of unrealistic expectations that can sometimes overshadow the joy of the season. And so, my major concern is that people tend to try to just push through these challenges rather than allowing themselves the gift of radical honesty, meaning like they're acknowledging where they are emotionally and spiritually as a result of these challenges so that they can begin to address those struggles with intentionality. And also grace, having grace for yourself for where you are. So, in my opinion, addressing these feelings early or bringing your attention to it early, even before the season begins, it can help create a more grounded and meaningful experience around the holidays where it doesn't have to be overshadowed by unrealistic expectations or disappointments.
So, what are some of the factors that will impact how people feel um, during the holidays? The stress or depression. What are factors that affect us during the holidays that are different from other times of the year?
Well, what I found mostly is that the stress during the holidays isn't just about the season itself. It's like the internalized messages of what the holidays should look like. And so we often feel like if something goes wrong or seems like it's falling apart, or if a relative acts out, that somehow it's not picture perfect. And so we end up overextending ourselves financially and emotionally in order to compensate for this perfect picture of how we want things to go. But I think it's important that we maintain a sense of reality and understand that we can go through disappointments and things like that during the holidays, and it doesn't have to ruin the entire holiday. So overextending ourselves financially or emotionally can add to the strain or the stress, as can grief, which tends to surface more often during this time. And so, what I tell people about grief, which I think is really important to hear in dealing with in the holidays, um, is that it's okay to give yourself space um, to actually like feel sadness or disappointment during the holidays. However, while we can create space for the sadness, we can simultaneously reflect on the legacies of those or situations we've experienced loss with. And so the beauty the beauty in such painful experiences is honoring or paying homage to the legacy of those that we've lost, like through sharing memories. I know oftentimes my family will, make a traditional gift in honor of those that we grieve, or even creating like a tradition in their name or memory. And then oftentimes sharing stories. And so this to me is a way of celebrating their life while giving you room to heal. And so I think about Psalms 119:71, I think, and it says, it is good for me that I have been afflicted so that I might learn thy statutes. And in my opinion, that speaks to that in every loss, there's a lesson, whether it's positive or challenging, and that God can use it to shape us and build us. And so by allowing grace and mercy to kind of shine through, we can honor both our losses and also the joy that this season still brings.
I'm happy you shared that, because that was my thinking as well, is there is that first holiday without that loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then that compounds from Thanksgiving to Christmas and, New Year. And I'm glad you addressed that, because that seems to me the crux of the challenge often in holidays is missing certain loved ones. That first time without mom or dad or a spouse and such. So I'm glad you share that, because in a point you made about being intentional about celebrating the memory rather than trying to not think about the person. Think about the person and remember with fondness and gratitude of the legacy. Now, why is it important for us to seek help and just not try to push through it when we have problems?
That old get through it to like just get to the next day. I think that get through it mentality is a term of survival, and it often keeps us like reactive and stuck in like a cycle of struggle and stress or survival mode. And so getting through it mindsets keeps us bound to things like anxiety, fear, and depression. If you think about it, it's like avoidance coping at its best. That's what getting through it means. I'm going to avoid as much as possible so that I can try to get to the other side. The only issue with that is that God's plan for us isn't just about surviving, it's about renewal. We all know the famous Romans 12:2, where he talks about we shall be transformed by the renewal of our minds, and hide his word in your heart so that we can continue to lean on that for sustenance during our times of struggle. And so from a mental health perspective, survival just keeps us stuck in that cycle of stress. It's important for us that as we address concerns as they come up, that we also understand it's okay to seek out assistance to help us with it, and seek help and encourage and in faith by like inviting others into the process of what we're struggling with. And that to me more aligns with God's intention for us and our holistic healing and growth. And so we want to move away from the get through it mindset and learn how to stay with it and get help for it.
Thank you. Also, in addition to the holidays, we're also coming out of an election. That was, for many, very distressing. And we're lamenting the outcome. Some of us are. But how do we navigate, and what can we do to maintain peace during this season?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very astute observation. I think peace is essential to mental health because it allows us to quiet the noise, both externally and internally, especially in today's highly politicized and polarized world, right? And so when I talk with people about what we're working through, I think it's important to think about how the Bible teaches us to be still and know that I am God. Stillness for sure connects us to God's sovereignty. It grounds us about his presence when life feels chaotic. And then from a psychological perspective, peace is an active practice, right? So we have a whole practice dedicated to mindfulness, meditation, prayer, or simply taking moments to like breathe and reflect, that all help to calm the mind, regulate our emotions, and bring us into more clarity. And so it's absolutely okay to feel the weight of the disappointment, to feel the frustration, or even to feel oppressed or betrayed in response to what's happening in our society. And I think it's important that we give ourselves permission to know that that is okay. Those emotions are valid. It's a natural reaction to uncertainty or injustices. However, it's also equally important to learn how to quiet the mind and not to let those feelings consume us. I think it's Philippians 4:6 that talks about bring everything, our fears, our I'm just trying to paraphrase it, but bring everything, our fears, our worries, our frustrations to God in prayer, so His peace can guard our hearts and our minds. And so, feeling and quieting can coexist together. It's about creating a safe balance that allows space for our healing to transpire, validates our emotions, and brings us fresh perspective and clarity.
That's good. And what I've also done and advised our people to do as well, if you feel the need to do so, is turn off the news. Just stop watching things, that make you feel a certain way. I actually went to a whole couple weeks of boycotting, the news, so to speak.
I'm still on that journey. I'm still boycotting.
I found myself fretting. Bible said, fret not. Mm-hmm. And that goes to how we structure our environments, what we choose to listen to and, focus on. Things that agitate us, trigger us. We want to avoid those things, Something else too, since we've last spoken, I become a caregiver for my 88-year-old father. And so this whole year I've been caring for him. We've hired caregivers and such. So I'm in that journey now. And so it's, I'm only child. So it's a challenge, but God is faithful, And so I think about people who care for the people. And of course, even yourself, who cares for the caregiver, who counsels the counselor, right? And I think about pastors now, that you have led a group called the First Shepherd Pastoral Mental Health Task Force. Is that the correct title? Yeah. And you've been doing that work for, I think, 3-4 years now?
Yeah. Yep. Since 2000 and I want to say 2019 were the beginning stages.
Yeah. With Dr. Posley and some others. And let's talk now, to pastors and those who care for others. What should we be doing to look after our own mental health? I mean, we're giving and trying to help people as best we can. And how should pastors and those who care for others look to their own mental health?
Yes, and that's a vital question. And I think it was around the time that we started First Shepherds that we started to recognize how pastors have kind of fallen through the loop of those who need to tend to their mental and emotional health. And I think as pastors, you're like a well that nourishes others, but even wells at certain points need to be replenished, right? So in my sessions with pastors, we focus on keeping the practices that will help to keep those wells full, whether it be spiritually, emotionally, or physically. It's almost like a plan that we come up with, a plan of treatment, so to speak. And so pastors, like anyone else, need to cultivate spiritual wellness by maintaining what I call psychologically healthy spirituality. And to give a little insight, this requires a level of intimacy with God, with yourself, where you're able to be radically honest with where you are, and also intimacy with others that you can depend on, and allows for transparency without judgment or condemnation. This also means like confronting personal wounds and emotional triggers, because pastors are still human, instead of like avoiding them or what I've noticed is oftentimes pastors are tempted to over-identify with their roles and pouring everything into serving others while neglecting their own healing that is necessary, or the remnants of what needs to be healed. And so that's why transparency is overly vital. not just with others, but with yourself, because sometimes we walk around and we don't want to admit that we're suffering in the ways that we are. We think, is this an issue with my faith? And that's a stigma that's highly held within the pastoral community, that if there's something going on with me emotionally, my faith isn't strong enough. And that is an unhealthy faith perspective to have. True wholeness isn't about being perfect. It's about living authentically in the tension between our humanity and God's grace. And so there's a level of suffering that comes with that. And if we're not willing to take a look at that, radically so, then we're missing tons of lessons and healing opportunities. And so that's why we created First Shepherd's Pastoral Mental Health Task Force, because it provides like a supportive space for pastors to address these needs safely, without judgment, alongside other pastors. And we do this through individual, group counseling, coaching, and offering different psychological practical resources, which oftentimes become very helpful for pastors as they're trying to build and restore and renew.
That's wonderful. I did put information on the screen as you were speaking. You used the phrase unhealthy faith perspective related to our work as pastors. Mm-hmm. And that made me think about, wow, that's an issue in some circles. What's an example of an unhealthy faith perspective?
Sure. An unhealthy faith perspective can be that the stigmas that surround mental health. So I'm not praying hard enough. Or if I'm truly called by God, then I shouldn't struggle. Or an unhealthy faith perspective can even lean way to hyper spiritualization of some sort, that I'm going through this because I have to base myself before God, or I'm called to suffer, and using that literally in your life. And so you can't find joy in anything. Those are examples of unhealthy faith perspectives that aren't based on any sound doctrine.
That's good. And I wanted us to emphasize that for pastors who are watching. We all have challenges, and we are men of faith, women of faith, no doubt about it. But Jesus, even, there came a time he pulled his own team off the field. Let's come aside and rest and eat. So the First Shepherd Pastoral Mental Health Task Force is doing great work. And I appreciate you and Dr. Clive Posey and others who are the foundation of this effort. So thank you so much for helping us. Let me ask this question. What are some things that we can do to help ourselves get through the holidays if we're feeling distressed?
Yes. So the first thing I like to recommend is that we practice radical honesty with ourselves, with God, with others, and acknowledge your feelings or your mood and thoughts without the experience of guilt and shame. So there's a popular psychologist by the name of Brene Brown, and she talks about the detriments of experiencing shame on a regular basis. But she likens shame to the movie Gremlins. I think she talks about how shame is like gremlins. If you notice, gremlins, they thrive in the dark, but they lose power when they're exposed. And so we want to practice radical honesty so we can have awareness, but we can also call those things out, because similarly, calling them out removes them from the darkness and brings them to the light, which diffuses them greatly. So that's the first thing I recommend, is that we practice radical honesty. The second thing I tell people is to focus on creating moments of meaning that align with your core values, instead of like chasing after perfection or what you've idealized to be the perfect holiday event. And then lastly, I encourage people to lean more into gratitude, not as like a Band-Aid or avoiding or distracting, but as a way to like reclaim perspective, where you're shifting your focus from what's lacking to what remains and is meaningful, and building on that. Gratitude doesn't erase the challenges, but it helps practice holding on or holding space for joy and struggle simultaneously. And so it's this practice to me that brings us back to God's provision and presence in every season. So those are some things that I oftentimes recommend that we try to do mindfully as we navigate difficult circumstances during the holidays.
That brings us to Thanksgiving, which I've always considered more than just a holiday. Of course it is, but Thanksgiving is a lifestyle, especially for Christ followers. And giving thanks brightens the heart, lifts the mood. Being thankful is always appropriate. In fact, Romans chapter 1, verse 20 kind of gives a warning when it says there are people who knew God, but would not glorify him as God, neither were thankful, and their hearts became darkened. And so certainly, a lack of thanksgiving is not good for us. And so as you have already suggested and said, giving thanks, being grateful, showing gratitude is so important. What are some things we should be thinking about as it relates to our loved ones and our friends during the holiday season?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I referred to earlier, this is a season about connection and meaning. So think about how you can create safer spaces for people that you love and also safer spaces for yourself. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't a present, but lies in your ability to stay present with someone. And so listening with compassion and asking questions that aren't accusatory or probing when you notice somebody is visibly upset. Like a good question you can ask is, how can I show up for you? Or how can I support you in this moment? And this honestly can make all the difference for someone, because likely all pain has a desire to be heard and or validated. And so when we give someone that space, a lot of times it can resolve things for them in that moment. When a loved one is visibly upset, it's really important that we resist the urge to match their energy or match their anger or sadness, or even to hyper spiritualize, or what one of my clients calls Jesus juking, to offer up a scripture to combat where they are. Instead, I oftentimes recommend that we practice staying vulnerable with them. So vulnerability says, I won't give up on you, but I will give you up to God in this moment. And so, of course, if there's abuses going on or if abuse is present, we want to create distance where necessary and have good internal boundaries. But a lot of times people just need a safe heart level conversation, even hard ones, which can deepen real connections with family and turn bad situations into better ones for the holidays, into something good. So
that's great. That's a great response. I heard a mentor once said to me that there are always more broken hearts than hard hearts, meaning don't just jump to conclusion based on somebody's behavior. That could be a broken heart, not a hard heart. Well, we've come to the end of our conversation. I like to always ask my guests, is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would share, the holidays can definitely feel like a refining fire, bringing up challenges that test us or stretch us mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But just like a metalsmith uses fire to strengthen and purify, God uses these moments to create meaning, to prepare soil for our hearts to grow. And so it can be easy to get caught up in disappointment and lose track of how far you've come or how far you can go. And so my encouragement is, even when life feels heavy or barren, trust that it's a process that is refining you, shaping your mental health, and cultivating a sense of resilience that can carry you into new and different seasons.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I've been speaking with Camishe Nunley, and she is a licensed mental health counselor. She leads a practice entitled Healing Your Hidden Hurts. And the information on the screen, website, contact her if you need help. But let the Lord encourage you and reach out to people like Camishe. Don't hide, don't feel ashamed, don't yield to stigma. You're too important. We need you too much for you to turn inward and turn off all the sources of help that God has made available to us. I want to thank you again, Camishe, for being on with me today. And we discussed earlier about your doctorate program, which you're coming around third base, heading home. We pray your strength in the Lord. I look forward to you concluding this journey. And next time you come on, you'll be Dr. Camishe Nunley.
Yay!
That's our expectation, okay? Thank you so much, Camishe. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. You as well.
Right. Want to thank you for being part of our program today, Health and Wellness in Focus, brought to you by New Covenant Church, Wellness Hub, by Vision Communications, and by yours truly. You can share this program and podcast, which is available on YouTube on demand, as well as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. You can log on to our website to have direct links to all those sources. Until next time, this is Pastor Bryan Hudson wishing you happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and have a great day. God bless.